Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and today we are talking about the future of education and specifically how the education is going to be funded. Back when I went to school in the early 2000s, it was you paid a whole bunch of money and then you went and got a job, and everyone was guaranteed multiple jobs on graduation because that's just what the world looked like when I graduated way back when. Today, it's very much not that. A lot of people have crushing student loan debt. And we're talking today with Austen Allred, a guy who is changing that, turning the model on its head and going to be giving people real skills where they only pay if they actually can go use those skills. Austen, welcome to Redbeard Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited because you're solving this huge problem, this societal level problem of people in vast amounts of debt don't make the same decisions as people not in vast amounts of debt. And people in vast amounts of debt for skills they can't use make even more different decisions. And you have this model, this outcomes-based education model that's helping people make better decisions. And we want to hear all about it.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. Broadly speaking, I was kind of in that first wave, or I guess that first generation where, we were told that if you get a degree, so I graduated high school in 2008, go to the best school you can, study whatever you love, and if you get a degree, it all works out on the other side. Turns out definitively not the case, not just, as I look around my classmates, but even as I look around my friends, I know a handful of people who, picked the wrong thing to study or, went, too much into debt and are in trouble, and in a way that is kind of financially damning them forever. So, my original thinking was, well, I think you could produce better outcomes than a university, that takes 4 years and you may or may not study something that's practical. I'm just going to build a school for the most practical, most in-demand stuff. And that was the beginning and end of it. And then as we kind of got going in that journey, realized, well, wait, if we're so confident that students can have a good outcome, why do schools never have any skin in the game, right? Why if I take out 120,000, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal a couple weeks ago, if I take out $120,000 in student loans and I go get a master's degree from USC and I end up making $50,000 a year, why does USC take all of that? Why am I the only one stuck with the debt? It's been almost 5 years of playing with different models of guarantees. We've used income share agreements, but really the long and short of it is, how do we make sure that students end up only receiving the good and not receiving the bad out of education from a financial standpoint?
When you're aligning incentives in an interesting way, when I graduated college, it was in '06 with a business degree, and they said the average is you're going to get 3 job offers. And that was the reality when you graduated from a state school in '06 with a business degree. It was normal. So you get to choose from your 3 offers, and if you're ambitious, you might get something else. You might get more. But that was normal. So the incentives at the time were, if we get you this degree, you're just going to get a job. There was no need to align incentives any different way in '06. It was just normal. But you're just realigning incentives. And I guess my first question is, why aren't other institutions doing this? Why is this a notable thing that's worth talking about?
Yeah, I think the short answer is, again, incentives. So if you look at in the early 80s, the federal government decided, hey, if we look at the outcomes of people who get a college degree, they're way better. So let's do everything we can to make sure everybody gets a college degree. One of the biggest problems in that was that students weren't, they're coming in with no credit history. They're 18 years old. A lot of rational lenders are not willing to give students loans in that environment. So they said, okay, well, we will just basically back any student loan for an undergrad degree, unlimited, whatever you want to study, however long it takes, whatever your background is, like the government will okay any loan. It's at a really low interest rate, basically eliminating any, in their minds, excuse for someone to not go to college. But the second order effect of that is a school sees that and says, okay, now we don't have to be cognizant of the same things that we were before. We don't have to have as many nighttime options. Really, it's, students have an unlimited checkbook coming in. the name of the game is how can we entice students that have an unlimited checkbook? And the answer is to layer in as many services, as much, the fanciest buildings you possibly can, charge the maximum amount of tuition, and there's unlimited money on the other side. So tuitions pretty quickly started rising. I think, adjusted for inflation, we're up about 3x before above where we were, 40 years ago, and that's just adjusted for inflation, right? And at the same time, the more and more students start going to college, the message was always, just go get a degree, go get a degree, go get a degree. And the outcomes have stayed relatively flat. So now when I go and I talk to the dean of a university, they have entire schools where the average, debt load is $70,000-$80,000 per graduate, and the average income is basically minimum wage or that of a high school grad. And that's massively widespread problem, and that's only talking about the graduates, not to mention the fact that the average student who enrolls in an undergrad degree doesn't actually graduate. But we don't talk about that either.
Whole different problem. I'm reminded of a friend who got a master's degree in museum science, and afterwards, after she got the degree, found what the placement rate was of people with that degree. And the answer was, if you actually got a job in the profession, the degree was a great ROI. But the vast majority of people didn't get, it was something insane, like less than 10% of people were able to find jobs with that degree.
Right.
And looking backwards, it feels criminal.
Yeah, a lot of time in those degrees, the only path to to getting a job is to get a PhD and to become a professor of that thing. And then, you can only retain a job as a professor so long as there are, a number of students paying tuition to pay your salary. So, in other industries, that would be called a Ponzi scheme at a certain
point. Or cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, the school has a disincentive to slow that program down or to stop it or to direct enrollment elsewhere. And frankly, most universities don't view. This is something I underestimated when I started. Is I thought surely all of the universities are focused on making sure their students end up in a good financial position, and they're balancing that versus students want to study other things. That's actually not the case. As I talk to university administrators, their goal at a lot of institutions is to bring in research dollars. The focus is really on the research, and the students are something you need in order to keep the people paid in order to do the research. So their goal isn't even necessarily aligned with the goal of the student. So we're at a deeper level of misaligned incentives to where when I thought through when I was first getting started, why are they not focused on outcomes? I thought just the financial incentive wasn't strong enough, but you actually learn that that's not even the stated purpose. They're not just not invested in that, they're not even interested in that.
You remind me of the story of how Harvard is a hedge fund that has a university attached to it. That story.
Yeah, totally.
The same thing with the University of Washington, near where I live, up in Seattle, where UW just owns a huge amount of Seattle, something like a fifth of Seattle. And yes, they also have a college associated with the university, but it's a tax shelter for investments that also creates graduates and undergraduates.
Right.
And if you thought it was a school, that would be a problem. And when I went to college at Washington State University, the crosstown rival or the cross-state rival to UW, I had a very weird thing, which my very final class was this capstone class. We're bringing in everything you've learned in 4 years all together. And first off, it was taught by a TA, and that was weird. Now it was a summer school class, but still taught by a TA for your very final bringing everything together class. That was weird. But then also, it was a really low quality class that it was like really bad discipline among the students, and the professor didn't know anything because they weren't even a professor. And I had some amazing teachers at WSU who were actual business people who taught one class a quarter or a semester because they were business people running businesses at that time. Amazing teachers. But the very final teacher I had was just a TA. They were a grad student. And I thought that doesn't make any sense. But what you're talking about with these incentives starts to make it make sense. And I want to hear about how you fixed all these incentive problems with the Bloomtech Institute of Technology and how you just addressed all these problems that we've both seen in our university lives?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you ask our investors, we created a very high hurdle for ourselves to where, there's a longer history. So in the early days, I would be talking to prospective students and they would say, look, I'm really interested, but I don't have the money to pay tuition up front.
Mm-hmm.
And, the answer was, well, we can, figure out a loan or a payment structure. And like, well, actually, I am nervous about the cash on hand problem, but actually, I'm more nervous about the risk, right? Like, if this doesn't work out and I end up paying you however much money and I have debt that is growing and, you end up with a microcosm of the broader student debt problem, which is, $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. And that grows at about 100 billion a year in additional student loan debt,
Mm-hmm.
not just because more students are enrolling, but also because there's interest. It will just continue to grow forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're nervous about being able to have the cash on hand, but they're even more nervous about what if this doesn't work out, right? If I'm making $30,000 a year and I end up $15,000 in debt as a result of a course that I hoped would double my income, then what? Then, I could be financially ruined for life. So this is a big risk.
Yeah.
So we started saying, okay, well, since we are promising, at least implicitly an outcome, what if we actually guaranteed that? What if we said, if you pay us X today, and we started with $1,000, and then after you get a job that pays you more than $50,000 a year, or $4,166 a month, then you just pay us a percentage of your income, and that took off like crazy. So we had thousands and thousands of applicants a month for this new model, and pretty quickly figured out how to make it $0 up front. And it was a somewhat high payment, so it's 17% of your salary for 2 years, with a $30,000 cap. So, if you were making $75,000 a year, you would pay us about $1,000 a month. And then what we recently added onto that is there's still the income share agreement option that's still available. We lowered the payment amount because it's some of the high incomes, which doesn't always happen, but if you're making $200,000 a year, you end up with some crazy monthly payment. Even though you knock it out pretty quickly, it's still a high payment. Or, if you're at the lower end where you're making $60,000 a year, 17% feels much higher at a low income than it does at a low income. So now we basically said, okay, what people are really interested in is the guarantee. And then the next thing that you want, if you were to ask a student, what they're optimizing for, is a low monthly payment.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of using an income share agreement, we created something called the outcomes-based loan, where if you look for a job and you're not able to find one that pays more than $50,000 a year, we refund not only all of tuition, all interest, all fees, everything. We actually pay you another 10% of the tuition out of pocket to compensate you a little bit for the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, if once you do get the job, the payments are really low. So it can be something like $500, $600 a month. So we only started enrolling students in that, but I'm sure we'll see students go from $30,000 a year to $100,000 a year, and then they owe $500, $600 a month in exchange for doing that. So we're really trying to eliminate the risk. We're trying to make it such a no-brainer to increase your income, and that's really our goal, is the most direct, lowest risk path to a higher income for every human.
It's also about where you're placing people. On your website, bloomtech.com, we can see that you're helping place people at Walmart, Berkshire Hathaway, Microsoft, etc. And I imagine that because you have a really big incentive for people to get high-paying jobs immediately, that the amount of your resources going towards job placement are vastly more than at a public university that has no consequence for failure.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't know what it was like at your university, but at the university I went to, and I dropped out, but the careers department was somebody that sat there with like a binder full of here's jobs you can apply to, and maybe if you were lucky, there would be like a resume info session on like how to prepare your resume, right? That's really the extent of most career services in most universities. We not only have a partnerships team that goes out and sources new jobs. We just did a hiring day with Zappos where they, instead of like a meet and greet hiring day, we do like a student should have a job offer by the end of this hiring day. So
Oh, wow.
they'll meet 8 students, and 4 of them at the end of the day will have a job offer. So we're doing a lot of those. Our backend course that we released about 6 months ago, we actually built that directly with Amazon.
Huh.
So that is not only, Amazon wants to hire graduates at the end. We co-built and co-market the course, because Amazon needs more back-end engineers than anybody could possibly provide.
I love that.
If you think about the growth rate of Amazon.
I love that. One of my companies is lendersonlinetraining.com, where we train lenders how to make better loans. And some of the content we have there, we've designed in conjunction with both our larger clients, but also with feedback from banking regulators.
Interesting.
So this way, we've actually had the experience of some of our clients where the regulators show up, they see our manuals on the bookshelf, say, okay, you're following that, you're fine. Like we know if you're following those guidelines from Linda Keith CPA, which is my mother's, she started the company. Okay, you're fine, because the regulators, they know the content and they helped have input on it, as did all these big clients nationwide. So we have this ecosystem of quality. And I love what you're saying that, well, and now that I think about it, well, why shouldn't you get a job in a day? If you can promise somebody, you give us a year of your life of hard effort or 2 years, then we'll give you one day. And if you're in the top 50% of people of quality of that day, you get a job.
Yeah, we'd love to get to a point where, every student we're not there yet, but every student has a job offer 3/4 of the way through the program, right? So we've actually been building now the job search and the networking process. And there's kind of a secret code of what it actually takes to get a job, especially if you don't have a resume, right? It's different if you're graduating from Stanford's CS program than if, hey, 6 months ago, I was a manager at Chipotle, and now I'd like you to hire me to be a software engineer. It's a different, it's still totally doable. Yeah. In fact, about more than half of our graduates have no degree whatsoever, and they're getting hired just fine. But you take a different path in that environment, and that's one that's more based on projects and networking than on, building out a resume. And that path, it ends up at the same great job. It ends up, you move up the career ladder the same way. You just kind of go in through the side door instead of through the front door. And in fact, even if you do have a solid resume, it's just way, way better to go about it that way than to, endlessly submit your resume into applicant tracking systems that are going to do some machine learning on the keywords that you used and then put you in the yes or no pile. So yeah, we've actually built that process into the school itself. So part of the school is not just here's how to write code, here's how to submit a pull request, here's how to work with the team. It's also, here's what you want to do in your first screening interview, and here's the person that you should email, and here's a template of what you should say. We're actually doing something now where if you'll pick companies, we'll actually help, create the emails for you to send out. We're really going above and beyond because we want to make sure all of our graduates get hired.
I love it. And you're also paying attention to what is current knowledge. When I was, it was 03 or 04, somewhere in there, I was taking a management operations class, 301 class, so upperclassman class, but we were learning about how to optimize a factory floor by a guy who had been teaching college for decades upon decades. And I thought, this is one of the most, and now a 10-minute session, fine. But we spent, I think it was days or weeks on this basic, literally optimizing a factory floor. I thought, this is the dumbest thing in the world. And one of the things we're doing at lendersonlinetraining.com is we're creating content around some of the cutting edge questions like, can you use cryptocurrency for traditional loan from a credit union? No one knows yet. We're exploring it with industry leaders and we're creating content around that. And I see you have a Web3 course that is coming out where you're going to be teaching people about decentralized finance, smart contracts, Ethereum, all that kind of stuff, cutting edge stuff. So you're going to be taking people who might have been a manager at Chipotle a year ago and they're going to be going through an outcome results, highly incentive aligned program and be able to create in the Web3 world within 6 months or 12 months. And that just blows my mind because that's such a different metric than when I paid money to go to a state school for 4 years and I did not come out, for the most part, with the cutting edge of anything.
Yeah, I think, I mean, especially in the technology industry, it's a nice benefit for us, but really it's what the industry demands, right? If you are a decently
Mm-hmm.
talented Web3 crypto, whether it's Solidity or just blockchain development in general, or you like Rust, whatever that may be, I mean, we've had we've seen, and our engineers that we hired at Bloomtech to be engineers, getting $500,000 plus a year job offers. And that's not, $500,000 in crypto. That's $500,000 in US dollars, and then you can buy whatever crypto you want with that. I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
market shifts so much faster than universities ever could even dream to. I mean,
Uh-huh.
if you're an accredited institution and you want to make a very subtle, simple change, even if you wanted to, which most don't want to in the first place, it's a couple of years before anything makes its way through the curriculum.
I have a story for you.
All right,
So
okay,
I thought I'm going to go teach. I want to go teach my alma mater. I'm pretty loyal to Washington State University. Went to school there, was mostly good. I want to go teach. And I've both tried this, the official through the curriculum way and also the unofficial to this engineering entrepreneurship institute within the school that I belong to. And I said, okay. I said to the official ways, I said, okay, I'll go teach a semester long class. I'll be there in person, once a month, and I'll teach it online the rest of the time. I'll do it for free. And I'll teach everything I know how to do through Redbeard Consulting about how to run a small business, the tech stack, the marketing, lead gen, everything. What is actually being done right now this year, not what was done 10 years ago. And one of my contacts there said, sounds great. And I said, okay, I can start next term. And they said, oh, no, it takes about a year and a half to get a curriculum approved.
yeah, yeah,
And I said, but a year and a half from now, the curriculum I just handed you for a 10-week thing, that won't be valid anymore.
yep, exactly.
The answer was, well, shoulder shrug, right? That he's doing the best he can.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a broken system.
Hmm.
Yeah. So for us, I mean, if I looked at our front end curriculum, I mean, first of all, our front end, so our web development curriculum today versus 4 years ago, not even, I would be surprised if more than 10% of it remained intact. But even if I look at, in 2021, we've made thousands of tiny daily iterative processes, changes to our curriculum, just little things to, make this word clearer or this better over there. And I know that because we have to submit those changes to regulators in an automated fashion.
Ah,
So we
huh.
still have to tell them what we're changing, which is crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's thousands and thousands of tiny improvements and changes and updates. And if you're not doing that, I literally don't know how you can have a school that trains software engineers. I mean, you can say, okay, we're going to teach you, fundamentals of computing, and then you're going to go figure it out on the job. But that's not what employers want to hire. So we're kind of in a weird spot there.
We come down to the difference between trusting theoreticians and practitioners. And what you're saying here is that you are a school of practitioners that is creating more practitioners as opposed to my university, and it sounds like maybe yours too, that was a group of mostly theoreticians making all the rules. And I had some practitioner professors who managed to get into the system anyways, but largely they were theoreticians who were producing people that could, in theory, be trained how to do something.
Yep. Yeah.
I love what you're talking about.
Yeah, we have nothing against the theory. I think the theory is important, but you need both, right? You can. There's no.
Yeah.
And this is a debate I have with computer science professors. Like, oh well, you're teaching practical stuff. That means you can't be teaching the theory or the
Hmm.
underlying concepts behind that. I'm like, why not? Right? Why can't I learn how a computer works by building projects? Like, why does it have to be an either or kind of thing? It doesn't make any sense to me. But I think a lot of academia, because your job is to research full time and then you have to teach on the side to justify that. That's where it ends up.
I think, Austin, I think this interview is not going to age well because I think in a decade, people will listen to this and go, Well, that was dumb because everything will have changed so much that we're recording this at the tail end of 2021. By 2031, this will become so normalized that, of course, a school would have a guarantee. Obviously, just like when you buy anything else.
I hope so. I hope so. I don't know why it wouldn't. So
Yeah, I love what you're doing. So folks, it's bloomtech.com, BLOOMTECH.com. There's a big old apply now button. And then Austen, we can find you on Twitter at Austen. That's AUSTEN. Is there anywhere else people should go? What about your book? Tell us about your upcoming book.
Oh, I mean, I'm taking a bunch of the essays that I'd written for Bloomtech grads on, how to break into the career, how to, actually meet a hiring manager without going through the application process, how to, kind of how to cheat at all that stuff. And mostly as a forcing function to myself, I'm putting it into a book so that I have to finish writing it all. Yeah, you can find that at austenallred.com. Or just wait until it comes out.
Don't wait, folks. I just bought the book just before this interview just to go and force myself, because now I put money into it, to actually look at the ideas when they come by. Because for anybody running their own business, if they can get a single good idea from a book and actually deploy it, it will provide a huge ROI on the tiny cost of the book and the handful of hours reading it. Austen, thank you so much for coming on Redbeard Radio and for all the work you're doing at the Bloom Institute of Technology to change how we perceive education. I'm so excited for the future that you're helping to build.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
It's wonderful. Okay, folks, take care.